remember the year my oldest daughter came home for Christmas after being away for her first semester at college. I remember her as a blur that moved quickly past my range of vision as she moved from the family room to the back door of our house. I was always doing what I used to do for preparation for Christmas. I was baking our favorite cookies, the ones the girls always helped me decorate. When Sarah moved past me in what she probably thought would be a quick escape, I whined the traditional call of the abandoned mother during the holidays. Aren't you going to help me decorate the cookies? She stopped. She perched momentarily on a low stool at the kitchen counter, haphazardly throwing green and red on the stamped out likenesses of Santa, a Christmas tree, a bell, and a star. And then she left to visit with friends that she had missed since the beginning of the semester. I knew in that moment that my Christmas would never be the same again. Christmas, and the meaning we make of it, is always changing. For Sarah's first Christmas, in addition to the 4 cookie cutters that were left over from my childhood, we had an armadillo, her father's tribute to his Texas upbringing. For some reason, I got the armadillo in the divorce, probably because it was my tradition to make cookies with the girls. I soon stopped making the armadillo cookie every year, not because I was bitter about the divorce, mostly because it was impossible to get the tail right. The tail was so slender, it usually didn't get punched out correctly, and the armadillo cookie was hard to identify as anything remotely related to Texas, let alone Christmas. When my girls were young, Christmas was a chaotic scramble to celebrate with both sides of the family. Christmas Eve was reserved for their father's family, a Texas tradition. Christmas morning was reserved for opening the gifts left under the tree by Santa. And then we jammed ourselves into the car for the 4-hour trip to Houston to celebrate the rest of the day with my family. After the divorce, I found it too difficult to make the trip by myself and stopped doing it. After Frank and I married and combined our families, Christmases became even more complicated. I was always proud of how we seamlessly moved from one Christmas event to the next. We started with Frank's girls at his parents' for Christmas Eve, after which his girls went to their mothers, and Frank and I went to church. My girls were, as usual, at their dad's and would be returned to me in the morning. By the afternoon, all 6 of us would be together for the traditional Brandis Pena white Christmas. White being my girl's last name, but sometimes it would snow. Sometimes it does snow in Dallas for Christmas or Christmas Eve, or maybe sometimes even the weeks leading up to Christmas. But not here. It doesn't snow here. We don't have the usual signs and wonders of Christmas here. Some say that LA doesn't suit the Yule, the poet Timothy Steele says. How do I make sense of Christmas now that I am 1,400 miles away from my family, work all week until late on Christmas Eve, and then make my way through the dark of Christmas morning to LAX? Our wise friend, the Reverend Dr. Tom Owen Toll, wrote in one of his earliest Christmas sermons, roughly 65 to 100 years after the Bethlehem birth, 4 men told it as it was for them then. Their distinct lessons remain wise commentary for us. Luke celebrated. Matthew anguished. John affirmed. And Mark was silent. What will it be for you, for me, this time around? Any of the above, some sort of combination, or our own peculiar account of the meaning of Christmas? How do Unitarian Universalists celebrate Christmas? That question gets as many answers as the question, do Unitarian Universalists believe in God? We would never pose the question as, do Unitarian Universalists believe in Christmas? Although I have heard people ask, do Unitarian Universalists celebrate Christmas, or why do Unitarian Universalists celebrate Christmas? I've also heard that we shouldn't talk too much about Jesus during our Christmas worship services, or that we should recognize it as the myth that it is and spend our time debunking the story as if worship could be an episode of the popular TV show Mythbusters. My friend Tom Owen Toll asks, what will Christmas be for you this year? Celebration, anguish, affirmation, silence, some combination of the above? Personally, I will celebrate love this Christmas, remembering the Christina Rossetti poem, Love Came Down at Christmas. Love came down at Christmas, love all lovely, love divine. Love was born at Christmas. Star and angels gave the sign. While I tell the stories and sing the songs this Christmas, I will celebrate transcendent love that incarnates again each time we tell the stories and sing the songs. I will look to all of the myths of the season and there find divine love in the form of a baby, divine love shining in the darkness, divine love reminding me that beyond the realm of right and wrong, good and bad, science and theology, reason and faith, there is a deeper truth that shines brighter at Christmas. Scientist, author, and Unitarian Universalist Jeffrey Lockwood writes, the mythic power of Jesus was his repudiation of dualism. The concept of God made flesh opened the door to the possibility, even the necessity, of scientifically informed theology and divinely inspired science. Lockwood finds God in the natural world, in his work balancing the ecology of the grasslands. He speaks to the prairie, and God answers. Science and theology don't have to be at odds with each other in his worldview. God is both transcendent and immanent in the Christian myth. Love comes down at Christmas and lives inside each of us. But what is a myth if it's not something to be debunked and discarded? Joseph Campbell, the king of, of myth and comparative mythology, well, he answered the question like this. He said, the dictionary definition of a myth would be stories about gods. So then, he said, you have to ask the next question. What is a god? A god is a personification of a motivating power or a value system that functions in human life and in the universe the powers of your own body and of nature. The myths are metaphorical of spiritual potentiality in the human being and the same powers that animate the life of the world. The Jesus myth teaches us that love waits within each of us as a spiritual potential. This is why at Christmas, Unitarian Universalists declare each night a child is born is a holy night. Each time a child is born, that potential is there. Myths teach us to be the heroes of our own stories. Myths teach us that there is a deeper reality. Love comes down at Christmas, and we throw a birthday party. Except we don't really know when Jesus was born. At first, the early Christians didn't even celebrate Jesus' birth because they didn't celebrate any birthdays. Celebrating birthdays was a pagan practice, not something the Christians looked favorably upon. Eventually, Christians were surrounded by enough pagans who not only celebrated birthdays in general, they also celebrated the birthdays of the gods they worshipped. So a date needed to be set, and eventually the date we have come to associate as Jesus' birthday was picked, January 6th. Because at first, Jesus' birthday was celebrated on January 6th, because it already had significance for Greek deities like Dionysus. But eventually, the celebration was moved to the 25th of December as Christianity became centered in Rome, where their custom was to celebrate the birth of the unconquered sun with the lighting of lights during the darkest of days, during today, solstice. The births of so many gods and heroes were celebrated in Rome during the winter solstice that in the 3rd century, the Emperor Aurelian created a single festival for all of them on December 25th. We find remnants of these gods and heroes stories in the Jesus story as it has been handed down to us. For instance, many of these gods and heroes were born of virgins, impregnated by the primary god of their cosmic story. The sun god, Mithra, was born of a virgin, and in addition, his birth was attended by adoring shepherds. Eventually, Christianity replaced Mithraism as the official religion of the Roman Empire when Constantine converted. Looking back, with our scientific worldview, we could easily dismiss the Christmas story as historically impossible, with borrowed symbols from subsumed pagan myths. But that would be missing the point. That would be missing the deeper truth contained in the archetypal story of the baby born, partly human and partly divine. At the mythological level, dualism does not exist. At the mythological level, the physical is not the opposite of the divine. Mythology, said Campbell, suggests that behind that duality, there is a singularity over which this dualistic reality plays like a shadow game. Myth can only point to what is transcendent, that which cannot be completely known or named. Myth, with its metaphors and symbols, can only point to a deeper reality. Take, for instance, the symbol of the virgin birth. According to Campbell, the virgin birth represents the birth of compassion in the heart, the birth of spiritual man, the spiritual human out of the animal human. One of the legends, even the Buddha has birth legends. So one of the legends of Buddha's birth is that he was born in a sort of virgin birth from his mother's side, from the level of the heart chakra. The birth of compassion. Love come down at Christmas. When we participate in the rituals of Christmas, we participate in the birth of love in the human heart. We rise above our lower nature and open our hearts to the whole of creation. Some of us participate in mostly the secular rituals of Christmas, reluctant to claim affiliation with the Jesus story. We are uncomfortable with parts of that story, the virgin birth part, lots of it, but mostly it's towards the end of that story that we get really uncomfortable, rejecting in particular a Father God who provides salvation through the death of his only child. Joseph Campbell taught that our reluctance to embrace some of the old myths is because we live in a time where new myths are needed, but have not yet been completely formed. He also taught that we won't have a new mythology for a long time to come because the world is changing too fast to become mythologized. He hinted that the new mythology will arise from science and from scientists' embrace of the Gaia principle, the principle that the earth itself is an organism. The new mythology will be about the entire planet, no longer defined by stories that divide us into groups who worship tribal gods with their own birth narratives. We will celebrate the myth of the birth of a united people born of one body, the earth, our mother. But until that time, we can rely on the remaining rituals and myths that still work to teach us how to live, myths that teach us to learn to trust that turbulent times are pushing us to the creation of new myths, myths that teach us that compassion is possible. My own Christmas tradition has always been fleeting. You might even call it a living tradition. Like my Unitarian Universalist faith, my experience of Christmas is adaptive. We can neither ignore the past nor cling to it. Holding on to traditions that continue to deepen our understanding of ourselves and our lives, and willing to let go of the ones that no longer serve. Christmas will never be what it was from one year to the next. This year, I'm celebrating love come down at Christmas. This year, I'm celebrating transcendent love, the mysterious truth that is impossible to definitively know or name. One that comes in the guise of a divine child, born again each year in the human heart. May it be so, and amen. And let's just take a moment before the mad rush to get out there and go to the mall one last time, to just do a brief meditation with me. So close your eyes just quickly. Just to remember, you can do this for 30 seconds. You can be driving. Don't close your eyes on the freeway, though. Maybe at a stoplight. But just to check in with your breath. Just to come back to this moment now. To remember that Christmas doesn't happen out there. in the tree and the lights and the presents and the meals and the preparations and the cookies. It doesn't really happen out there. It happens in here. Each year, again and again and again. Love is born in the human heart. And so for a moment, sitting with that truth that you can carry with you all week long, however you practice it. Christmas, the dwindling days of Hanukkah, solstice, Kwanzaa, Festivus, Chalaka. It comes from your heart. And now please join in the words printed in your order of service that we say here as we extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
We are the Caneo Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. Our mission is to nurture spiritually courageous people who transform the world through justice and compassion. Like us on Facebook, check out our website at CVUUF.org, or come visit us. See you soon!